Just go ahead now.
Whenever you're ready.
Right. I chose The Complainers, and The Complainers is a Channel 4 documentary which shows the country's most persistent complainers and the organisations such as call centres which have to deal with them. This is the trailer I found which they put on YouTube. They didn't really make any others apart from little montages like this.
But the network has.
You! This is the minimum, man. This is 1 meter. You're well in. You need to be careful. They're too close to me.
Over the last 3 years, Lewis has recorded every single journey he's made.
What is your name? What is your name? You're a twit. That's what you are.
He's known to name and shame bad drivers.
You can kill a fight that's the way you're driving just now.
And answers complaints to transport companies and police.
Let's face it, I'm on this mobile phone as well.
If you've done something wrong, I have this invincibility of the law, which I feel protects me. That's why I confront people with the law.
No one is safe from Lewis's all-seeing eye.
Signal, signal, signal.
It is a war of attrition.
I'm going to report you to the police.
One has to be prepared to combat that.
I'm going to report you for that for being rude and aggressive.
Right, yeah, so as you can see from that, and with all the other trailers, for The Complainers, it was more or less just a montage of people just screaming at other people down the phone to customer services complaining at call centres, and there was very little to suggest it wasn't a reality TV show for entertainment purposes, and even with just the music in the background, for a documentary, it's just really not quite relevant to it, really. And also the shots they just used over and over again, like the red card and things, you couldn't really take it quite seriously. Yeah, so the documentary started by introducing the people complaining and the people having to deal with the complaints. There was 3 episodes in a 1-part series, and they followed 3 or 4 different people in each episode and a few different companies as well. And yeah, so throughout the introduction, there was a narrative of facts about customer service and complaints, such as complaints in the UK have doubled in a year. However, it failed to go any further into that and why it had actually done it, or anything like that. So instead, it just really just kept showing clips of them just screaming down the phone. And even though it was meant to be about the complaint services and how they dealt in things, and they just didn't show any of that. They just seemed to brush straight past the facts of why it was happening or why they were actually complaining. The narrative and the story of each character was very repetitive, and it showed that the creators were highlighting particular parts of it and keeping an idea in the viewer's minds by showing the complainers just saying the same thing over and over again, not really getting anywhere. It just seemed like sort of a pointless thing they were just doing for the sake of it. They were just twits, really. And the complaint companies were sort of, they kind of found it funny, and they just didn't really bother them much at all. The documentary never focused on why there was a problem or how the subjects felt about the situation and they were in, and when they did, it was very short and brief, as if it didn't matter, and the point was instead just about them just pointlessly complaining. It was just back and forth constantly with that. And the people at the complaint centres and the call centres were almost making a mockery out of them and making them out to look like fools, because they were just talking some nonsense. Like, they didn't show them talking about anything else or why the problem was happening. They just kept going back to the same thing every single time, and just wasn't going anywhere from that. The creators were almost making fun of the complainers themselves as well, and by the way the music was chosen and the shots were put together and the ridiculous situation the subjects were put in, it's very difficult to take any of it seriously at all, really. The people running the call centres were shown as victims to like these just whiny complainers who were just pathetic in the documentary because it never showed why they were doing it, and the situation was blown way out of proportion as it is in the show. They seem to be avoiding the facts of the situation, how the call centres could have solved it and why it had gone out of proportion, and the UK's complaints were rising every year. At the end of each episode, they kind of rounded each of the characters' situations to an end, but we didn't really do it at all. They were very brief and quite unsatisfactory endings. After you've just watched an hour of them just going round and round in circles, you'd think it would have got somewhere by the end of the documentary. But it finished basically just with a bit of titles saying like Peter went on to get a new gas cooker or something, and it just didn't really say anything else on how else it was solved. And even just at the end of it all, it was on about like the notion of war between these two rivals and how they would face each other again. And I just couldn't take it seriously as a documentary at all. And I thought it was, in a sense, similar to Benefit Street, as in it took something which could have made a documentary and could have got some truth out of it. But then they avoided a lot of just watching clips and things, that they only took certain parts of the interviews out or part of the stories out and just kept one or two things, so it kept going around in circles. I think it was just completely exaggerated, especially with the music and the effects they put in as well. So yeah.
Excellent. That was really good, John. John, thank you very much indeed. Any questions for John, please?
I don't think it would have been better to show it more equally.
Personally, the biggest thing for me was the very, very tiny amount of facts they actually put into it, and the numbers and the call centres and what they were doing and things. I just think a lot more factual stuff put into it would have made it a bit more documentary instead of an entertainment reality show. So,
I'm really impressed with how you've identified here that it sounds to me, I'd never even heard of this before you put this up, but it sounds to me like the producers have actively tried to avoid any kind of reality in it. I mean, in making these characters look so pompous and ridiculous, it looks like they've actively moved away from even the opportunity to present real issues. So, yeah, well, it's really good, John. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Lovely. Right, so if you could stop the recording, that'd be great. Danny, you're on.